Hello, adventurers, and welcome to my first in what I hope to be a long series of campaign diaries. But as we set out on a new adventure, I wanted to introduce you to the continent sandbox that we will be exploring in our second D&D campaign. This is the continent of Syston, and our previous adventures in the town and regions northeast of Windhome is part of this map, but I wanted to give you a political overview of where we will be adventuring. To give you some scale, what you see here is the detailed parts of the map. This covers an area equivalent roughly to the southwest of the United States. California, Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, um, through that region. It's about that many square miles. Now, I will begin with where our campaign begins, and that is called the Dual Duchy, an agrarian, fairly stable country in the south-central part of the continent. Typically, it's called the Dual Duchy because it has two rulers, a western ruler and an eastern ruler. And our brave adventurers will start in the city of Sully, there in the eastern half of the Dual Duchy. Now, this brings us to two what are neutral city-states. Throughout this continent's history, there's been conflict, strife, and the many races that exist needed a place to come together to trade, negotiate, talk, so they created two neutral, basically safe zones. The first in the east is Harmonia. Harmonia and Plainmead are roughly the same size. These are cities of, say, 750,000 people each. But Harmonia is the older, dirtier, more rough and tumble and criminal city. Plainmead wasn't built nearly as long ago. It's cleaner, it's safer, but it lacks sort of the old school character and dirt of Harmonia. If you want a comparison in other venues, I think of Harmonia as Gotham and Plainmead as Metropolis. Now, moving on, there's plenty of other human countries. Out in the southwestern desert regions of our continent, you will find the Yashari Emirates, a desert empire covering tens of thousands of square miles with long distances between cities. And again, it will have, Emirates, it'll have 5 ruling families, one at each city. Sandwiched between the Emirates and our dual duchy is the newest of all the countries in this campaign, the Klax Empire. They are a post-conflict state only approximately 2 years old. As you can see, it's with the name forts everywhere. It is a military government and under military rule. And hopefully our campaign will bring us into this area and you can get into some of the back politics of it. The next human country is off to the east, the eastern reaches of humanity's spread. That is the Rosar Protectorate. This is a forested region. It is still coastal, but this is much more of a frontier area. It's much more on the wilds and the edges of civilizations. So it's much more of sort of an 1830s, 1840s American West expansion territory. Now, with the 4 human countries taken care of, we can move to some of the other races. And the first is our mountain dwarves. And the mountain dwarves are located in the Crucible clans, a mountainous and wooded area in the western uplands of the continent. They are sandwiched between deserts to the west, dangerous forests to the east, incredibly dangerous mountains to the north. But your mountain dwarves, because of all those surrounding enemies, have managed to keep themselves alive and doing very well here in the Crucible clans. Their hill dwarf counterparts are the Cragfolk clans. They are really in the middle of everything. They are surrounded by humans to the south, elves to the north and east, and keeping the balance has been a moment of pride for the Cragfolk clan for generations. Now, with the dwarves out of the way, we can move to the elves. And first are the High Elves. The High Elves will come from the Fulmar Promontory. That is a plateau of several hundred square miles at the northern reaches of civilization as adventurers and societies know it. You know, to the east is what is called the Ebonite Dynasty. These are the Wood Elf regions, a area of dense and magical forests. That, along with the Fulmar Promontory, these areas have had civilizations and governments for effectively millennia, unlike a lot of the other, more of the upstart communities, such as the humans. We can't leave out the halflings, and they have a small, concentrated area called the Home Hearths. They are settled between the dwarves and the humans in particular, but their home area is pretty concentrated. Gnomes come from an island just south of the Klax Empire, and those are the Gnome Lands, a secluded island not far from the coast, just a few miles. Our orcs have their own island called Orcarist. The Gnomelands are fairly open and can be pretty well traveled. Ogreist is not. There is an orcish city called Crowbox, so if you play a half-orc character, somewhere your family tree will probably pass through the city of Crowbox. There is a lizard folk country. And that is to the eastern reaches, out past the humans and the elves, and that is called the Marsh of Alatos. This is a very mysterious and unexplored area of dense jungle, forest, wetlands, etc. Rumors have it there is a lizard folk city called Rosk, but almost no one has ever actually traveled that far, that deeply into the jungle to explore it and trek there. The map will also show you a number of unsettled territories, places where mass settlements have not settled in. One, for instance, is the Dragonstrife Desert. This is just north of the Ashadi Emirates. This is known for an epic struggle between the desert dragons of good and evil. Another region is the Neverdeads, a wide area of just lifeless existence. The rumors have it that this area is just completely coated and covered and infested with the undead of the world. Just to the east of the Neverdeads is what is called the Highlands. This is a mountainous, volcanic, and sometimes snow-covered regions that is very rugged terrain. Many of your mountainous dragons, your giants, etc., would call the Highlands home. And this makes for why the dwarves have always had to be careful. To the southeast of the Highlands, you wind up with the One-Way Woods, and this gives you some of its locations around it. An area of thick woods, dangerous woods, where a whole lot of explorations will enter and almost none return, hence its name, the One Way. Last but not least is an area called the Sunless Swamp. Um, Muck, mire, marsh, just very, think Dagobah, but less cheerful. This region is pretty close to a lot of civilizations, but if you notice, there's just no way to pass through it. No roads, no settlements, etc. The last thing in all of this to mention is that there is the Sapphire Sea. And this gives you some of the locations. All the empires and governments aren't just limited to what is on land. And it is a possibility that getting out onto pirate ships, getting out onto sailing ships, getting under the sea is a real possibility for adventures in this campaign. Now, the one thing to make sure of with all of this before we conclude is this is just a major overview. You will get so much more into the weeds and details of this as our campaign progresses. And with that, that concludes this introduction to the continent of Syston and its major regions and political units.